Hi, today I'm diving into the case of AI Enterprises Ltd. versus Bram Enterprises Ltd. And it's something that interested me when I came across it in Chapter 4 of the readings. And if you don't know what unlawful interference with economic relations means, you're not the only one, because the courts didn't know what it means either up until this case. So let's get into it. This is just an overview, and the context of this case is a condominium property where most of the ownership was held by a family, and a minority of the ownership was owned by a corporation. The family was keen on selling the property. The corporation was not so keen on selling the property. Eventually, a vote was held, and the time for they decided to sell the property, and the time given for the corporation to buy the property at its property value had expired, and so the property went to market. What happens next is the basis of the claim. And so the actions, the corporation obviously did not want to sell the property, and so it acted in its own best self-interest and did everything in its power to prevent the property from being sold. And so since it was the manager of the property, the director of the property, it very much did not allow sales to go through, or maybe I shouldn't put it that way. They prevented people from seeing the property, locked doors on, retailers coming to tour it, stuff of this nature. Were not compliant in organizing whatever they needed to organize, and so it ended up the family sold the property back to the corporation for its property value, but then sued them on the basis of unlawful interference with economic relations because it interfered with their ability to sell the property. And these are the court's findings. And so what was examined here was there was a duty to the shareholders. And so the duty to the shareholders was based on contract because the corporation was the director of the property, the manager. And so it had a director not only to itself, but to all the members. And so the judge took this into consideration in its ruling, and it ruled that the actions were intentionally aimed at blocking the sale of the property and causing the investors financial harm, which they did. They didn't get as much for the property as they could have. And so the court ordered that the corporation pay the difference between what it bought the property for and what it could have been sold for. And so this kind of laid the groundwork for later appeals, and the corporation did appeal this, and it went to the Court of Appeal, and they appealed it on the basis of what we did was not illegal, or maybe I should say unlawful, because I was acting in my own self-interest, and that's not unlawful to do. And so what did the Court of Appeal have to say about it? Well, they basically sided with the trial court and awarded damages to the investor. They basically said that the director's actions unlawfully interfered with economic relations of people coming to buy the property. And so it was done in a harmful way, and it was intentional, and so they just said this ruling stands, basically. But it was then appealed again to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court had a different mindset. It said that the unlawful interference with economic relations needed to be interpreted very narrowly and not so much in a very broad sense. It said, yes, although the actions of the corporations were intentional and harmful, that did not make them unlawful. And so that was the key. The key there is really the unlawfulness of this situation. Is it unlawful to act in your own best self-interest? The court said no, because obviously this would decrease competition. And so in that sense, the courts are very hesitant to touch on this sort of a subject because they don't want to decrease competition. And so, but they did award damages, and the same damages, and they found a basis for that. And although it wasn't unlawful interference with economic relations was the basis, they found a basis that the directing an officer had an obligation towards its 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 investors to act in their best interest, not just their own best interest. And so that was a violation of a contract because they're not acting in good faith or in the best interest of everybody. And so they still awarded damages on that basis, not unlawful interference with economic relations. And so what is the basis of this logic? Well, the courts applied a two-pronged test, and the first was the unlawful interference was the interference intentional? And the action to this is certainly yes. It was very much intentional. It was established in the first two cases that it was very much intentional. There's no disagreement there. The second is it unlawful? Is it illegal for this corporation to act in their best interest and prevent the sale? And the answer to that is no. It is not illegal for the corporation to act in their own best selfish interest. In fact, if you were to regulate this, it would completely kneecap competition. That's kind of the basis on what a capitalistic society runs on. And so they did not find that part about it unlawful. Again, they did say that they had an obligation to act in everybody's best interest here, and so then they awarded damages on that basis. So corporate greed is not actionable unless a third party. This is the thing. The basis of it being unlawful is they said, could a third party sue this person for it, not being privy to this contract? And the answer to that question was no. And so that is the basis of unlawfulness here. And so this is just how does the logic of tort, how does the logic define the tort of unlawful interference with economic relations? They decided that it should be a narrower approach in interpreting unlawful interference with economic relations. Very clear that it should be free to promote their own interests, even if it harms competitors, as long as the actions don't dive into illegality. But again, because the corporation needed to look out for more than its own selfish interests, they were in the wrong here. Sorry, because the corporation didn't act in its own selfish and didn't act in everybody's best interests. They were in the wrong. And so other cases, where can this idea and logic be seen in other cases playing out? And so Latifi v. the TDL group is basically a claim in which employees brought a claim that their employer was being very ill in their contract relations to them, or just their relations to them, kneecapping their wages and making it hard for them to move around to different companies or just different parts of the industry. And they said this was unlawful to do, and the court said no, that is not unlawful to do because it's acting in its own best self-interest, which is not illegal, although maybe sleazy, right? Another case where this can be seen is the Bloor Peer Administration Court v. Bank of Nova Scotia, and in this it just refers to the what is unlawful interference, and it discusses again that two-pronged approach of is it intentional and is it unlawful, right? Really, and can specifically what can a third party sue the person who committed the infraction for it? And the answer, no. And so that is the end and the summary of what unlawful interference with economic relations is. It's interfering with somebody's relations, whether economically, whether that be financially or somehow causing them economic harm, that is both simultaneously intentional and unlawful. And unlawful, again, can a third party sue them for it? So that is what unlawful interference with economic relations is. Thanks. Bye.